Hey everyone, welcome to PunkCast. My name is William Maxwell. I'm a student of Web3 and the owner of Punk1163. Cryptopunks are 10,000 uniquely generated characters stored permanently on the Ethereum blockchain. No punk is the same. This is a show dedicated to celebrating the punks behind the punk. My hope for this podcast is that we capture the essence of the punk culture, elevate the brand and the individual behind the punk. One last thing. Projects discussed on the show is not financial advice. Crypto and NFTs are a volatile and risky asset class. Please always do your own research. Other than that, let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to PunkCast. Today we've got Punk1163, a beautiful 3 Atty with a mole, blue eyeshadow and rare pink hair with a hat. He's the man of numbers and stats with objective and insightful tweets. He's also the director of research at Proof Collective. Please welcome Gigabrain Punk NFT Stats to the show. Stats, how are you, mate?
What's going on, man? Nice to be here.
Nice to have you. So where are you calling in from today?
So I live in Colorado. Yeah, I've lived here for the past year and a half. And before that, I lived in Hong Kong for 15 years. So definitely still feel like Hong Kong is home, but grew up in Wisconsin, now live in Colorado, and a lot of Hong Kong in between.
Hong Kong represent, man. And it's a shame we didn't cross paths while you were still here, right? Because you only just left like a year ago, I think.
Yeah, I left July 2021, and definitely, it was really kind of when I got to the States after leaving that I got really big into NFTs. But I kind of feel like I should go back. I feel like there's a lot of NFT stuff going on in Hong Kong.
Man, you should definitely come back. I think it feels like there's a bit of a resurgence here in pockets. I think, who's that? Adrian Cheng is just aped into Azuki's, and there's Animoca that's here, and all those other bits and pieces that are sort of going on. So, but I don't think there's like a really sort of a strong NFT. It's all really spread out across sort of Hong Kong. So, but the vibe's good. I think you should definitely come.
Maybe
back.
You notice it more from afar. Like from afar, I see that like Ben Dow is based there. Potatoes, obviously 9gag. Adrian did that kind of big ape into Azuki. And it just when you told me you were from Hong Kong, it just feels like there are pockets kind of picking up there for sure.
Yeah. It'd be great to have you back if you could. But man, why don't we just kick it off? Like, maybe if you can give us an intro to, I guess, your background, and how you sort of came up with NFT stats.
Yeah, so my career this is kind of my third career. My first career was I worked at Goldman Sachs for 8 years, and at Goldman Sachs I did macro research, so a lot of kind of building out charts and trying to analyze markets. My second job was I was one of the kind of first 40 or 50 employees at Uber, and expanded Uber into international markets. So, and while it wasn't my job when I was at Uber, I really just loved diving into the Uber database and digging into SQL and kind of analyzing the data there. So I guess fast forward a few years, and I kind of got the bug, got into Cryptopunks. I was really when I started NFTs, it was all about punks. And one of the things that I found frustrating was I couldn't find a chart with like floor price history. This was like a year and a half ago, and I didn't know where it existed online. And I was trying to get a feel for how punks were doing, and all you could see was like volume charts or how many trades happened. And that isn't always a great proxy for prices and how prices are moving. Just like the volume of a stock is very different from the price it's trading at. So I basically just started tracking it myself, and it was nothing crazy. I would literally go to the Punks website once a day and write down on a Google Doc what the floor price was. And then I kind of started cutting and pasting the different attributes and built out a Twitter account that dug into punk statistics and really just focused on punks. And I found that like over time, people actually were interested. And I started building out charts about punk floors and how different traits were building out. And the account started to grow. Then I added Bored Apes. I bought a Bored Ape. back when the floor price was a little bit lower, I think it was like 30 or something like that. Bought an ape and started tracking ape stats. And my account actually was called Punk Ape Stats. And then over time, I realized that there was a lot of demand in the marketplace for just like objective analysis about the space. So I started to basically focus on macro and cover the entire market. And that was kind of the history of this account. It's been around for about a year. And it was really through the account I got this job at Proof. So very thankful to everybody who has followed along and followed me and retweeted stuff, because it did help me, I think, end up with this job, which has been amazing.
That's cool. And there's a lot of things to sort of unpack there, but maybe if you could just help us understand, I guess, your transition from, I guess, the TradFi world into sort of crypto, and how you sort of got into there, and then we can get into sort of the NFT side.
Well, so I definitely had like a space in between, right? So I started in Goldman Sachs. I left Goldman Sachs in 2011. So it's been a while. I'd say the bigger jump was from working at Uber full time to getting into crypto. And to be honest, I was never that into crypto. Like I actually remember when I launched Uber in China. And when I was there, I spoke at a few conferences, and this was 2013. And there were a couple other, like, every now and then there was like a big crypto person speaking, like Roger Ver spoke at an event, and I went out to dinner with him and some of his friends, and they showed me how to buy Bitcoin on Coinbase. So I bought a few Bitcoin back then, but like never really got that into it. And it was really just NFTs. Like I've worked in crypto here and there, but just never fully got on board with the messaging. And then with NFTs, I joined this community, kind of started feeling this like connection to the punk I bought. And I was like, okay, like I think what's interesting about NFTs is it's one of the first times I've observed in crypto that people talk about the product instead of the tech. I felt like when I was looking into crypto without NFTs, like the conversations were all about, it was complex, it was confusing. Like my parents didn't understand it. My parents don't understand NFTs, but like I feel like at least with NFTs, like we're just talking about the different traits and what we like. And people who get into it start to identify with the different pictures they're buying and the different teams that they're kind of like supporting. And it feels like a lot more of a natural experience in some ways. So this has really been kind of the first market I've really dove into and really wanted to like attach myself to.
Awesome. And were you collecting anything before NFTs, like outside, like art? And
I'm not a big collector, no. And to be honest, I'm actually, with NFTs, as I've got more into analysis, I have like a decent bag. I own a bunch of NFTs, but it's not like it's not like where I'm putting all my family's money. I think it's just like a super interesting market to analyze. And there aren't that many people doing it. When I worked at Goldman Sachs, to come up with something interesting that the market wasn't aware of was extremely difficult. Like at Goldman, we had like 25 competitors who were looking at the same stuff as we were. And in NFTs, like all you have to do is dig into a collection and put out some charts that show something that the market's not aware of. And it's not even a thing where you don't really have competitors. Like we're all just trying to figure this out. And it's super nascent. So I think it's I really enjoy analyzing it. I think it's a really unique space.
I can tell. And so mate, I've got a question from one of your ex-colleagues, DOPP. So shout out to DOPP, who sold his punk, and I've been trying to get him to buy back into a punk. But he wanted me to ask you, you've got a really good history of picking jobs really well. So obviously Goldman's and then Uber early on. So question for you is, why did you decide to take a bet on Proof?
That's a good question. I think when I looked at what I was doing, right? Like, so early when I moved to the States, I actually worked with a friend of mine from Uber. And I enjoyed working for him, but I just got so distracted with NFTs. Like all I wanted to do was focus on NFTs. So I told him, I was like, hey, I kind of got to move on. I can't keep working with you because I'm not giving it everything I got. And I started really focusing on the analytics side of my Twitter account. And it was really through that I got to know Kevin Rose and the team at Proof. And I just like the job I have at Proof is really just kind of an extension of what I was already doing. It's like he has probably the best platform in NFTs for both reaching NFT community as well as the outside community. And to have that platform to build out what I was working on was just like the perfect job for me, and I could keep going to random coffee shops and digging into stats, but now I actually had an audience that cared, and where I could get paid for the work I was doing. So it just felt kind of like the perfect platform for the work I was already doing. And the other thing is, like, I think Kevin is one of the people who really understands how to connect with a really wide audience. I think within NFTs, we have something like 50,000 people who trade NFTs per week. And clearly the ultimate goal is to certainly be a lot bigger than that. And I think Kevin's one of the absolute best people. He's fully doxxed. Like, he's just out there and very connected with kind of like the tech community. And I thought that connectivity was, it was like a good reflection of kind of like my career as well. So overall, it's just been a good fit.
Nice. Yeah, I'm a big Proof fan and Moonbird fan too, and a huge fan of Kevin and the team. And so your role now as director of research at Proof, like, what does that sort of entail, and where do you see it going in the next sort of few years?
Sure. I mean, I think that the first thing, like the easiest way to describe it, is that when we launched the Collective Pass, and I'm not personally a Collective Pass holder, I only joined in August, but in January when Kevin and the team launched the Collective Pass, part of the package that we committed to them was a research product that gave them insights into the market and ideas. And he basically, kind of, my role is to serve that community. So every day we put out a daily report that talks about what's happening in the community in NFTs. We put out a couple notes a week that give kind of one pagers on different projects, what our views are of different projects. And then we also put out deep dives. So we have a lot of different research that we put out, which serves the collective. And that's like the easiest way to understand it. I think the goal, though, is clearly to become just thought leaders in the space overall. And we've written 4 deep dive reports that we've published and have made entirely public. And really, I think more and more we want to build content that we just serve to the entire community, because, the more that we get out to the community, just like the more value we're adding to everyone. And I think in that environment, like, there's more reason to get a Proof Collective Pass and get to know the team. So I think that's the second piece. And then the third piece, which I do think is really, really important, is serving the Moonbird community. And we have to figure that out. Like, what do we want to, how can we serve that community as well as possible? Because whenever we put research out to the Moonbirds, there's so many opinions, so many thoughts, like just really deep insight. And that's a community we really want to serve as well. So it's the collective, it's kind of the broader ecosystem, and then it's also just Moonbirds and oddities and just like the broader Proof ecosystem, but writing reports that help people understand this crazy market.
Awesome. No, I've been digging into some of the Proof Espresso pieces, so they're really cool because it just cuts out a lot of noise, right? And you concisely sort of summarize that each day. Um, and then I think just a side question then for you is, like, how do you look at value for NFTs, right? I think we can sort of go down some rabbit holes here, but an art piece versus something with utility, discounted sort of cash flow models, almost, like, how do you sort of look at valuations for NFTs?
That is a very, very hard question. And I think especially, and I think that's one of the reasons that there's such a disconnect between kind of like the traditional finance world and like economics professors and like NFTs and crypto, but certainly NFTs, is it's just extremely difficult to put a fundamental price tag on any of these things. So I think a lot of it is just really, the people who I know who are the best at trading and investing, I think, are much better at getting a feel for what is going to be, like, what are the projects where there's going to be continued attention on these products, continued interest in these products, and those are the ones you want to buy. And it's very, very difficult to say, like, a Chromie squiggle is worth 12 ETH, but it's not worth 15 ETH, or like you must buy it at 9, because none of those things really are true. Like, these are not, there really aren't fundamental valuations here. So I think a lot of it is just understanding market dynamics, understanding momentum, understanding, like, are there more buyers than there are sellers? Like, what's the nature of the holders? Are these people who want to sell, and are there reasons that more people in the future are going to be paying attention to this than are currently paying attention now? I think like that directional gauge is a lot more realistic than saying there's a fundamental like cash flow based model. And one of to me, one of the most off-putting tweets is like, this is deeply undervalued, because we're in a space where there's not really fundamental valuation. I always say like one of the biggest sell signs is a lot of people on Twitter saying something's undervalued. It's just an industry where it's about like perception of where is the attention going to be coming from, and are people going to want to sell? And like that's an extremely difficult concept for people, and certainly as an analyst, very difficult to like wrap your head around. But I don't really have a better answer at this point.
I think attention's a really key one, and you can get attention in so many different ways. Like I think we were speaking earlier about Azukis, and just like a huge sale from the collection drives a lot of attention to the collection. But there's different ways of doing it.
Like that's a great example. Like over, this past month, there have been, I think, 5 or 6 Azuki, not this past month, in October. So the past 2 weeks, there have been 5 or 6 Azuki sales at over 100 ETH. Now, what's clear to me, and having lived in Asia, having been to Azuki events, is like that Azuki is really picking up energy within like the Asian community and the Asian American community. Like they're just, as well as non-Asian community. Like there are a lot of people who are not Asian who love Azuki, but within those communities, this is like a real status symbol. And there are 95 spirits. I think that's right. Like something in the 90s spirit Azukis, and they're all getting bought up. So like the supply and demand of that asset just starts to feel like there's something happening there. And a lot of this is just identifying like where are these supply demand imbalances going to happen? And it's very hard in NFTs, like, because most projects have 10,000. 10,000 is so much. Like the most prolific artists of history would paint 1,000 pieces in their entire lifetime. And we're churning out 10,000, with the push of a button. And I think these supplies are just too high for kind of like sustained value in a lot of cases. But like the real question is like, where are these supply demand imbalances going to happen? And where is there like longevity to that supply demand imbalance? Like Chromie Squiggles, like if generative art becomes something that's studied at every university, will the fact that Chromie Squiggles were the very first art blocks project, or arguably, or certainly one of the first, or certainly the first one to like gain kind of widespread attention, will that be something that just creates demand in itself? And it's really like this study of supply and demand that I think is what you need to do to be good at predicting prices in this space.
And so for you personally now, like what's drawing your attention? Like anything sort of interesting in the market right now?
Yeah, I mean, I am interested in Azuki. I own one, which for my bag, like I own one of most of the projects that have done well. And the ones I really like, I own 2 of. So for me, owning one, it's not like a situation where I want to pump it or anything like that. And one thing that I will say about my account is I never pump my own bags. I have no interest in making money off followers or using my account to enrich myself. Like this account helped me get a job, and that's something I'm grateful for, but I'm not trying to make money off it. That said, I think Azuki has carved out a niche for itself. And I really like people who love Azuki are really, really passionate. I think the team is delivering. When I saw Adrian Chang like bought 100, that to me says that there's a whole new potential set of buyers that could be coming in. Like maybe you get new demand generation elsewhere. So that's a project I think is interesting. I think right now you have to be interested in at least curious about Digidaigaku and what's happening there. I mean, the fact that Gabriel Layden raised $200 million, like $200 million in cash, not valuation, $200 million in cash before launching this product. That is so much ammo. And he has built 2 games in the mobile space, over a decade ago, or around 5 to 10 years ago, that generated $1 billion or more. Like he's just a really charismatic person that's interesting to listen to, and that's thinking in a very innovative way. So do you want to buy Digidaigaku at 13 ETH? Like, I don't know. I'm not, that's very like, it's an extremely high price for any gaming asset. Like one thing he said on a call is that in actual gaming, there is nowhere in the world you could actually pay 13 ETH for for products, like they just won't let you. Like Apple Store has $100 minimum. Like you actually couldn't do it. So these prices are already so far ahead of what gaming assets are worth. But if there's anyone who has the money, the charisma to do it, I think Gabriel's someone who you definitely want to be following right now. So those are a couple of the projects that I'm following kind of with interest, but it's definitely a hard market, and I think we've seen over the past 6 months that, most NFTs, like there's more supply of NFTs than there is interested buyers. So you do have to be careful on what you chase right now.
Awesome.
And I don't talk about, I love what we're doing at Proof, but because I'm like an insider there, it's just, I don't really talk much about products. It's not because I don't believe in them. It's just, I was hired to be an objective analyst. And when I was at Goldman, we didn't analyze Goldman stocks. So that's a little bit just kind of like the ethos I try to bring to this role.
And then going back a little bit further, then sort of bouncing around a bit, but what interests you about CryptoPunks back in the day?
I love CryptoPunks. Like CryptoPunks are like, I didn't mention CryptoPunks, but I love CryptoPunks. Like that's my biggest bag by far. I think it was just kind of I love Larva Labs. I think those guys like are super innovative. Every time I've like heard them get interviewed, Kevin did a great interview with Larva Labs that I recommend everyone listen to, because he did it before IP was an issue. Like he did it in March 2021, which was before, Bored Apes launched. And I think Bored Apes launching was really what brought this like IP issue to the front. And it was the IP tension that I think created a lot of tension within the punk community. And I think that was partially kind of what led Larva Labs to give up the product and sell it to Yuga. So I love that podcast because you get the Larva Labs opinions before any of these things were issues. And they just have really understandable perspectives, and perspectives that where they clearly just want what's best for this product and want to keep it protected, but also want to see it thrive. And I really admire kind of what the two of them built. But
can you just can you just share with everybody what the IP conversation was about?
Well, I think that there were issues where Larva Labs basically never signed off on the IP and said that every holder has full rights to do whatever they want with the IP and monetize it however they want. They always kept a little bit of control over it. And I think for a lot of punks who built out kind of like big influencer status, I guess, and influence within the community, they said, like, I've helped punks and this is my punk and I want to be able to do whatever I want with it and make as much money off it as I want. And, one thing about Larva is that they actually never sued anybody ever. So there was never a situation in 6 years where they ever kind of created any issues whatsoever with any punk ever. Like you could literally do whatever you want. There was zero evidence that they actually cared at all, but they refused to like legally sign off and say anyone can go and monetize their punk for more than $100,000. So I think because Bored Ape set that precedent, and because Nouns with CC0, like there were a couple situations where people started to really like loosen the reins entirely on the IP. And, Larva Labs always said, like, this is our project. We want to have we want to safeguard it a little bit. And that became an issue.
Yeah, I do remember that actually. I think it was G Money that did that collaboration with Adidas and Punk's comic, and he couldn't use his punk because of that piece. So he had to create a separate icon for G Money to be put on as a brand as part of that project. But yeah, I do remember that as a
my guess. I'd be curious what that conversation looked like, because my guess, and I'm speaking way out of turn here, but my guess is if he used it, he wouldn't have gotten in trouble. But I think there was like this just perception. And it was just kind of like a meta for a while that like you had to be careful with your punk, even though they never pushed against anyone for doing it. But yeah, I would have been curious what that conversation looked like. But Kuzomo de Medici, a big influencer on Twitter, he just had a thread about how at first I didn't really understand NFTs. I thought there was like just too much supply. It was too easy to create more. And Kuzomo had a great thread about how as more and more supply comes on, the original NFT gets the benefits. Like everyone dilutes each other, but that original NFT like remains kind of like the grail. And I think it's arguable right now if Bored Apes have in some ways taken that. Like, there are certainly certain buyers when they enter NFTs, they rather have an ape than a punk. But like, for me, I just think like, punks, they haven't promised anything. They don't owe the community anything. There's no drop that we're waiting for. There's none of that. It's just like, as more attention comes to NFTs, like, I just think punks over time could accrete value. It might not, there's certainly a possibility that doesn't, but it just feel like, to me, it just feels like the original kind of NFT, the original symbol of this movement, the original symbol of like NFTs. And again, I'm sure there were NFTs before them, but I think this is the first one that really kind of proved this concept of profile pictures. And I think it's kind of a special project for that reason.
No, definitely. And mate, talk to me about more specifically about your Punk 1163 that you have as your avatar right now. When did you buy it, and how did you come to, choosing those traits? Because it really, really pops and stands out for sure.
Yeah, so my Twitter is Punk9059, and it's actually not the punk I use as my profile picture. I do own two punks, so 9059 is the other one, which was my first punk I bought. But I got really into punks in the beginning, and I wasn't into NFTs. But I just love punks. And I was talking to my wife, who is not an NFT person, and I was like, oh, maybe like you should have a punk over time. And she's like not into it. So she's looking at these pixelated images. She's like, what are we even talking about here? But like, forced to choose, she liked the pink hair ones the most. So I bought a pink hair punk, also because I kind of liked him too. I actually bought it from Pranksy. We did like a personal one-on-one transaction, and I made it my profile picture. I probably had like 2,000 or 3,000 followers, and I built out the account with that as my profile picture. But I listed it for 168 ETH, and it was like a total reach price. And then after like 3 months of having it, I wake up one morning and it sold. So that was
which punk was this?
I think it was 642 or
Okay,
624.
what was it? What did it look like?
It was a pink hair punk as well. So
okay.
like, there are like 4 skin tones. There's like bino, then I guess white, then middle, and then dark. And this was a middle one, like no eyeshadow, just a really simple like middle skin tone pink hair punk. I think it was 642, and I loved that punk. And it was like, it sold, and
so that was a dev punk too. So less
it
than
was a
1,000.
dev punk too, yeah. And I just didn't think it was going to sell for 642. I didn't think it was going to sell for 168, but my view on NFTs is like, you just list them high and see if someone falls in love. Because we saw the Justin Bieber trade where he paid 500 ETH for a floor ape. We've seen punk sell for $1 million that were floors. So 168 wasn't $1 million, but it was a good chunk of change.
640K back in 31st of December. That's huge.
Those were the good days, yeah. So then I like didn't have, so then I went back to 9059, made that my punk. And then I built like out a pink hair vault. So I wasn't going to buy another pink hair punk, but I bought another, like a pink hair World of Women, a pink hair Azuki, a bunch of other pink hair stuff. And was like, okay, like I missed that punk, but I'll at least build this vault and kind of with pink hair NFTs. And then after Yuga bought punks, for some reason I was actually kind of bullish, and I was on an airplane and there was a punk, my current profile picture, that was listed for like 100 ETH or 110 ETH, and I just bought it. It was like one of those spur of the moment decisions, and I'll probably never buy an NFT again on an airplane, but and it's kind of become my identity, so I can't complain.
No, it's super cool. Just at that point in time as well, man, you said that you were bullish after the Yuga announcement. What was your sort of take on it? Because I think there were sort of mixed views in the community at the time, right?
Yeah, there was mixed views. I think it was, I don't remember, because I was on the way to South by Southwest when it happened. I was literally on an airplane, and so much has happened since then, and my views have changed so much over time. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly what I was thinking that moment. But I think it was two things. One was that there really, like, the V1 punks issue really was divisive in the punks community, and the IP issues and 4156, and there were a lot of people who really, prior to the V1 punks issue, were really anti-Larva. It just felt like there was so much tension in this community. And
could you just also just elaborate on what the V1 issue is? Because I'm not sure
oh
most people
man,
sort of know.
we could do a whole podcast on the V1 Punk issue. I have to like remember, but basically there were, oh man, I've like never explained this, but there was another contract before CryptoPunks came out. There was another contract that had some bugs in it, which was kind of like which came out prior to what we now know as CryptoPunks. But the contract had bugs. So what they did was said, we're going to give you all a new NFT. We're going to replace this one. And we'll give you a new one for a contract that doesn't have bugs. And that contract is what we now know as CryptoPunks. 5 years later, or 4.5 years later, all the owners who owned those V1 punks in that buggy contract, someone came and fixed the contract, patched it up, and the people who owned those original punks were like, "This is the original CryptoPunks, and this should be worth, given this as a historic NFT, this should be even more historic." And started and then basically every CryptoPunk effectively had a doppelganger, had like, a twin in this V1 version, and it really aggravated Larva. Like Larva was like, no, like the whole point of this is one of ones. Like these are what are meant to be the CryptoPunks. Like these V1s were just not the attention. And they also realized that there was a little bit of an existential threat there. Like if there are 22 aliens instead of 11, or maybe it's 18 instead of 9, or 20,000 instead of 10,000, everyone's actually in some ways a one of two. Like that was pretty existential to what they were doing. And they came out pretty against it. And, they sold a bunch of the ones that they owned because they owned a ton. Then got it banned from OpenSea, did all the things that like really just don't sit well with the NFT community. And it just led to a ton of tension and a ton of people being unhappy. And I think a lot of people forget just how negative the energy was between the community and Larva. So they're like, with Yuga buying them, it was kind of like, okay, like we can move on past that. And plus, like at that point, like March 2022 or April, whatever it was, like Yuga had just delivered insane amount of value to Apes holders. They were just deeply creative, and a lot, I'm not an ape at heart. Like I'm a punk at heart, and a lot of people, but I also owned apes for a while, and I just saw how good they were at creating value. So I was like punks are still punks. You can't change like the fact that punks are punks, but now you have this team that's actually really good at generating attention, at making people care. And I was like, sounds like a pretty damn good combination. Like an incredible NFT with a team that's probably the best in the business at like in 2022 making people care about NFTs. Like in that moment on that airplane, I was like, this is a good combination. Maybe I'll get back in the pink hair punk game.
Awesome. And mate, I just picked up on something you said. You're a punk at heart, and you've had apes in the past, and now I'm in the same boat as well. But I'm just curious to understand why you're genuinely a punk at heart.
I think it's a lot of what I said, like, about how this was just like the first NFT. There's something about like the people who own them. And I just think, it just resonates with me. But beyond that, I think the first NFT, sorry, my phone or my computer just, I think the first NFT you own, you just draw an affection for. The first community you're a part of, the first NFT you own and feel connection to. And I've never been deep in the punks community, to be honest, but like the first one you feel connection to, like that sticks with you, and that's kind of, and I think a lot of Moonbirds, like it's just the first community they got into, the first expensive NFT, first big purchase they made. And for me, that was punks, so if I had just like and I had 3 friends from Goldman who were like, you got to buy CryptoPunks. These are going to be huge, so if those people had said, you got to buy apes, maybe I'd be an ape at heart, but this was just the first thing I kind of personally got myself into.
And mate, looking back on your NFT career today, like, do you have a memorable win or loss that comes to mind?
I'd say that sale of that punk for 168 ETH, like punks were kind of dropping then. This was kind of like Pranksy was liquidating, 4156 was liquidating, like the floor was going down. And I bought that, and then afterwards I was like, that probably wasn't a great buy. Because I bought it from Pranksy when he was liquidating. So to get out of that trade like 3 months later at 168, like that was just awesome.
It's a big trade.
Even though, like I said, there was that melancholy that missed that punk. And that was like, that's one of my like reasons I kind of believe in this space is like I just made a ton of money off this trade, and still I felt, I mean, I didn't make actually a ton of US dollars off the trade because ETH had gone down
Yeah.
since I bought it, but like I did make money, and but I still missed the punk, and I was like, oh, that's kind of like an interesting phenomenon. I also, I've done well with apes, you know. I like I bought my first at 30, and one of the things I did was I listed it for 146 ETH, and I never claimed land. So I had this ape that had like this option of a land of land. I listed it at 50% above the floor, even though you know it's probably like floor plus 15%. And someone who was in
Awesome.
a gambling mood bought it. You know, so that was like that was a great sale because right now I probably couldn't get 90 ETH for it.
Big
So that
difference.
was kind of a fun sale. There was one a week where FTX had a ton of apes that were all unmutated and listed. This was like in December, and they were all for whatever. Like the FTX team didn't update prices, so anytime apes rallied, you could buy them on FTX for like 5 ETH below floor. So one morning I like flipped like 7 of them.
Oh well.
Like literally, I'd do these. I'd get these like sort of like floor plus 10% apes off FTX, and then take them to OpenSea and go into Discord and find buyers, and they'd be like, "Why are you selling this so cheap?" So I can keep recycling the ETH and do it again. No one else knew about it. It was one of the few times where I saw something that was like too good to tweet about.
Do you find yourself being more of a trader back in the day before you sort of started Proof? Were you in and out of degen sort of trades based on the insights that you came up with, or
I had
what's your trading style?
moments. I had moments where I got into trading, but never really. And I will say I've never once tweeted anything with the intention of making money off followers. Like for me, it's always that's just never been my intention. And part of it's that I've had like a successful career through Uber and Goldman Sachs. I didn't feel the need to come in here and make every tenth of an ETH I could. There was never like, to me, it's like this account has always been about honesty, transparency. Anytime I tweet about an NFT I own, I put bag disclosure and say that I own it. I just like, that's just not my personality or my jam. Um, but there were times where I got really into quirkies, and I would get into degen plays a little bit, but as my account grew and I got more into macro analysis, I really started trading a lot less. I will say though, I do think that the biggest edge you can have as someone doing analysis is to also be a trader and a buyer. Um, and you can, like, I see some of these websites where it's just so clear that the people doing the analysis don't trade NFTs. So I would say like a lot of times I do like to trade just because it like keeps me sharp and gives me so much more insight about, like, I know so much more. If I see a punk sale, I can say 5 things about it. If I see Cool Cat sale, which is a set I've never owned, I just have like much less insight, no matter what the screens show me. So I do think there is like a lot of value in kind of being a participant as well. And like I said, I don't do a ton of it now, but that probably is a weakness.
Definitely. I mean, just reflecting on that as well, I sort of find after being in and out of a lot of collections and degenning a bit, you start to get a sense of the cycles, pre-reveal, post-reveal. Are you sort of finding, consistent sort of trends and similarities around, price correlation with different phases of the project?
It's so hard because right now it's so hard to make money. I think like one thing that's just revealing to us is that there are more NFTs than there is ETH and attention right now. So I think like the broader trend has been lower, but you know, I'd say, yeah, I'd say like pre-reveal, it's very, very rare that you make money post-reveal.
Yeah.
I compare NFTs to, I got 3 kids, and they want, anytime we give them a present, they want nothing more than to open the present. And if they know there's a wrap present, that's all they'll think about. And the minute they open that present and that wrapping is out, like it's over. They want another wrapped present, and I feel like there's a little bit of similarity to NFTs. Like the minute you reveal, with that ape, the minute that it claims its land, the minute a Renga black box gets opened, like it loses so much of this imagination premium. And imagination is a bit simplistic. Like there is also like a gambler's premium, and NFT traders are often gamblers and are in it for the dopamine and that open. So I think that is one trend. Like preserve that option. Like if I had a QQL pass, I'd probably never mint it because there's someone who's willing to pay for that optionality over time. Same with Renga black boxes. You should never open a Renga black box.
That's a really good way of putting it, right? Definitely a case of curiosity kills the kitten, right? So, and when you look across, I guess the key punk personalities in the space, do you have a favorite one that you like tuning into?
Yeah. 6529 did an interview with, I don't remember, I think it was Raul Paul. He did an interview. And as I was listening to it, I was like, every line you're saying is something I should be tweeting. Like he was just like hitting home run after home run with his statements. And like, I'm not one for cliches. I'm not like even I'm not a big crypto guy. I'm kind of a big NFT guy, but I feel like he's really added a lot when it comes like, I got it more from listening to his interview than it was from actually reading his tweets. I found that really illuminating. So he's one guy who I think, I think he just nails it when it comes to understanding like the meme value of NFTs and just like the connection people feel with JPEGs. Actually, that point I made about how this is the first time where people are talking about the product instead of the tech, I need to give him credit. He was the one who planted that seed in my head. So I think he's just got a lot of wisdom. So he's one person. I always got to give a shout out to my fellow pink hair punk Claire Silver. Like I think she just represents artists really, really well and is just like a really honest person and authentic person in her Twitter account, which is really, really cool. Also, I feel guilty like having this female punk, but being a male. So she's at least like a female punk a female human being representing the pink hair punks. So a lot back in the day, one of the reasons I made my background bright yellow on my Twitter profile is just because everyone was always saying that they thought I was Claire. So I figured I'd at least, she's been a pink hair punk a lot longer than me. So I wanted to honor that and create a little bit of differentiation instead of looking too similar to her. So those are two punks who I have a lot of respect for, but there's so many cool people who have punks, and a lot of them are just people who don't have tons of followers, but are just really interested in the space and have a ton of insights, and who I've gotten to know, at NFT NYC and over DMs. So there are a lot of people out there.
Yeah, I think you've honed in on two really good thought leaders in the space, right? For I guess their respective fields, get a lot of value out of both of them. And if you were to describe punk culture in a few words, how would you describe that?
It's a hard one for me because I've like never been deep in the punk Discord, to be honest. I think I hate the term OG. It's just such a terrible term. I hate using it, but I like that is kind of what jumps to mind for me. Like I think you just have there's a huge overlap between punks and like art blocks, and it feels like people who almost predate this utility PFP hype moment that we've been through for the past year. And I think it's one of the reasons that art blocks have done really, really well is that the owners of like, if you look at like Fidenzas and Chromie Squiggles and Ringers and, a lot of the art blocks that have higher values, like they really have not gotten hit very hard in this bear market. And I think it's because the owners are like a lot of CryptoPunks who bought them in 2021 and have been holding it for a long time. I think that it's really the punk community that kind of holds down a lot of these older assets. So I've been to like one or two events like with punks, and it's always good fun. It's always interesting when you meet people in real life, though. Like, yeah, it's not like I have like these huge differences between the punks I meet and the moonbirds I meet. Like, they're all just pretty cool people.
And if you could pass on a message to the next owner of your punk, what would you like to say to them?
Well, I don't plan on selling them, so I don't. I wouldn't say that's like I wouldn't say that's like something. I don't plan. The next owner of my punk hopefully is my kids. So, I'd say hold on to these things. You know, this is a cool piece of history. Listen to the Larva Labs interview with Kevin Rose. Like, get a feel for the guys who started this project and understand what it's all about, and you know, be proud to be someone who is one of 3,000 owners of this really cool project.
Well, Sam, that was a really fun interview, man, and thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Yeah, man. I saw someone who is a Proof Collective member and owns a punk and lives in Hong Kong, and I was like, let's definitely hang out.
In.
Let's go. Let's go.
Well, you definitely need to come to Hong Kong and definitely hit us up, man. I'll get the crew out. I'm sure they'll be happy to see you.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, I can't wait to get back. So it's been a while.
Well, guys, that wraps up PunkCast for another week. So thanks for listening, and we'll tune in again next week.